My name is Aled. I'm the minister here at Emmanuel, and I'm here to tell you about our brand new church vision. So this is a culmination of lots of praying, lots of thinking, lots of discussion, and I originally gave this talk at a special session that we did after church last week, but sadly the video failed to record, so here I am doing this for you now. And you may be watching this because you are a member here, or you may be watching this online and wondering what on earth this church is all about. Well, not long after I came here, which is just over a year ago, we as a church looked together at the book of Colossians, Paul's letter to a small church, encouraging them in their growth. And the big thing that we saw in that letter is to grow as a church is to grow in who we know, to grow in Jesus, to grow together in Christ. And there are three aspects to that growth, and they're going to appear on the screen. Firstly, there is spiritual growth. Spiritual growth is not something we can easily measure. It doesn't seem tangible, but it's to do with our discipleship and our spiritual growth. So that's from reading the Bible together, by hearing it preached, Bible studies, midweek groups, prayer, meeting together one-to-one, deepening our devotional life. That is spiritual growth. Secondly, there is physical growth. That's a bit more obvious, a bit more tangible. More people joining us as a church family. We're quite a small church, so physical growth is easily seen. Finally, thirdly, financial growth. Again, very tangible to see when we look at our accounts. Now, I'm not going to go into all the detail here, but our treasurer, Jenny, said to us last Sunday how things are going, and things are going pretty well. We're narrowing gaps in terms of deficits, but there's still much work to be done. So we urge you, if you consider yourself a member of this church, or you're looking to support faithful Bible ministry in the Church of England in this area, to ask the Lord to put on your hearts ideas of giving. Those three aspects of growth, physical, financial, and spiritual, are all important. And it's very easy to focus on physical and financial. But actually, we believe as Christians that spiritual growth, when prioritized, leads to physical and financial growth. It is honoring to God and good for those around us. We're never going to completely grow, as in we're not going to get to a final point where we are spiritually grown up enough or anything like that. It's a lifelong journey. So we're not looking for goals in that respect. So let me give you just a little bit of a history of the process of discerning this vision. So in my first committee meeting just over a year ago, we sat down together, and a very popular suggestion I gave was to give them some homework as a committee. We all had to go away and think about answers to the following question. What makes Emmanuel, Emmanuel? What is it about our church that makes it feel like it's our church? What are the things that we do well? What are some of the things we could do with getting better at doing? In terms of doing that, we had to firstly look at some of things that have happened in the past. We need to ground our vision in our long-term and recent history. Emmanuel was planted in the 1960s. The present building that I'm sitting in at the moment was built in 2001 to shine as a beacon for Christ in this big parish of Cheadle-Hulme. We reflected over the last decade how we've been through some turbulent times as a church. We used to be a conventional district. Nobody quite knew what that was. We're not one anymore. What does that mean? There's been a lot of changeover in terms of ministers, and of course the pandemic, which hit every single church, but hit ours as well. So when we're doing this vision, therefore, we're acknowledging that we have been through hard times as a church, and we look forward to an uncertain future, but with a certain God. who has been with us all the way through these turbulent times and continues to be with us now. After all, we are called Emmanuel, which means God with us. That's the beautiful thing that we learn of who Jesus is, God with us. So we've looked at our historical context. Now we need to look at our geographical context. It's important when discerning a vision to situate ourselves both in terms of where we are geographically, but also where we are in terms of our ecclesiology, that is, our church background. Obviously, we are in the Church of England. The Church of England, the established church in this land, part of the worldwide Anglican communion across the world. That tells us two things. It tells us we are part of a very big picture, but it also tells us that we are part of a struggling church. Decline in general across the Church of England is going down. And of course, there is much confusion and pain over recent debates concerning issues of human sexuality. We're wobbling from our firm foundations, and it's important to note that as we seek to bring the good news of Jesus to people around us. As part of being in the Church of England, that means we are part of a diocese. We are in the Diocese of Chester, which in itself has recently launched a new vision, particularly focused on reaching the 1.4 million people in our diocese who do not know Jesus. So we are part of that movement. As well as a diocese, we are part of a deanery. We are part of the Deanery of Cheadle, which kind of bucks the trend in terms of your average deanery, in that we have a lot of strong, financially viable churches. We share many things in common theologically with one another. That's a rarity in the Church of England just at the moment. And we are part of a parish. We are the daughter or sister church of St. Andrew's. And so we share a parish with them. So that means we're not on our own. We're part of a big picture. We're on the same team trying to get the good news of Jesus out to a needy world that is yearning for hope, stability, and community. We are working in partnership. So that's where we are in terms of our church context, but we also need to note our geographical context. Obviously, we are in the town of Cheadle-Hulme. Now, many of you who are watching this may have lived in the parish longer than I have been alive. I've only been here a year and a bit. Before that, I was in a completely different part of the diocese. But before that previous post, I was in Poynton, which isn't too far away. So I know a little bit of the area, but not as much as many others. So the 2021 census has been my friend lately as I've been looking through some statistics. There are approximately nearly 2,500 people in the town of Cheadle-Hulme alone. And within that, our parish, which is St. Andrew's and Emmanuel, has about 15,000 under our care. Of that 24 and a bit thousand, approximately 12,000 call themselves Christians, 8,000 say to have no religion at all, 1,200 claim to be Muslim. So, in lots of ways, we're not that diverse. We are a typical South Manchester, Cheshire-esque demograph. But that is changing. There is a significant Muslim population in our area, and I think we as a church need to think hard and pray hard about ways to connect and reach that faith community, as well as thinking through the 8,000 people who claim to have no religion at all. 12,000 people claim to be Christians in Cheadle-Hulme. That can mean all sorts of things, but the most sobering stat I worked out is 0.2% of our parish come to Emmanuel. Now, that's not meant to be a kind of, oh, woe is us, isn't everything terrible? It's meant to be sobering, but it's also meant to ground us in reality. It's being realistic. We have an uphill climb. We have plenty of opportunities, but it is going to take some effort and some thinking and some praying on our part of how to connect with a post-pandemic world as a post-pandemic church. What has been our vision process so far? As I said before, we had some homework off the back of our first committee meeting together, thinking through what it means for Emmanuel to be Emmanuel. For church visions to be grounded, I don't think a church vision needs to be just parachuted in by me and basically go away and tell everybody, right, off you go. Church visions, I believe, need to be built from the ground up, to be owned by you, the congregation, or those watching from the sidelines, as it were. This vision needs to outlast me if we want to make it effective and successful. So we started doing that, and as a PCC we had a day away to keep exploring questions, which has led to where we are today. And I'd like to introduce you to the final results of our thinking, our praying, and our discerning. They're going to come on the screen. Our core values and purpose of Emmanuel. Our vision statement is God with us for the good of all. That is based on our name. Emmanuel means God with us. So our purpose as a church, we believe, is to be a fruitful church, a growing church, to make the reality of God with us true in the hearts of our community, our church community, and our wider community. We believe we can do this by enacting what we have identified as our 3 core values. Here they are. Being fruitful by being faithful to Jesus' word, by sharing Jesus' hope, by showing Jesus' love. Faith, hope, and love. These core values are not inventions of our brains. We've nicked them from the Apostle Paul. In the New Testament, that trinity of wording, faith, hope, and love, is often utilized by Paul in his letters to churches in terms of growth and in terms of healthiness. Being faithful to Jesus' truth, sharing Jesus' hope, showing Jesus' love. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're not doing something brand new. We are doing ordinary church life, because we believe that the local church is the hope of the world. We are the same church with new beginnings. It can be very dangerous when enacting a new vision, especially with a newish minister like me, to make people think that everything that's been done before was just wrong and it wasn't working and you all need to feel really bad about that. Here's a brand new thing. That is not the case. I say it again, that is not the case. Joining Emmanuel was one of the best things to ever happen to my wife and I. We love it. We absolutely love it. The attitude of Emmanuel to the Bible and to one another is so refreshing and sadly rare. We are respecting the past and embracing the future with this vision. I believe, and I say this as a pessimist, this is very countercultural for me. I believe we are on the cusp of a new work of the Lord here at Emmanuel. We have evidence of growth in terms of our spirituality, our physicality, and our financial viability. We need to keep that going. Part of visualizing all of this work, we commissioned a friend of mine called Jodie to make a new logo for us. So here it is on the screen. We have a vision. So what happens next? Well, in lots of ways, we're going to carry on doing what we're doing. We're not necessarily going to stop everything and start again, but what we are going to do is be reevaluating everything we are doing as a church in line with our values, keeping us on mission and on vision. Having had a bit of a bird's eye view over the past year and a bit, I think we have 4 key priorities that we need to look at over the next few years together. Firstly, deepen our discipleship. fostering our spiritual growth through our Sunday services, our midweek groups, our one-to-ones, one-off events, particular training, particularly if anybody is discerning some kind of call, some kind of ministerial call. Perhaps you are discerning a vocation. If that's the case, I'd love to talk to you more about that, and we can point you in the right direction of ways of resourcing and helping you with that. Secondly, growing our families and youth. Now, this is the case with pretty much every church in the country. It's very rare to have a strong set of families. But I also want to say that I am not of the opinion that getting the kids in, so to speak, will fix the church. That's just not how it works. Churches are for all ages and all stages of life. Having said that, we do need to reach the next generation for Jesus. That is part of our call to go and make disciples of all nations. We need to think strategically about how to do this. Some of the avenues we've enjoyed in the past just aren't there anymore. So we need to be creative in thinking through how to reach the next generation for Jesus Christ. Thirdly, establishing intentional outreach. We all know that we need to be sharing the gospel. Be that on a personal level with the people God has put in our lives, be that family members or friends or members of our community. We know we need to talk about Jesus. We know we need to invite them to church. But that can just feel so daunting. But it can also just become a thing of we know we need to do it, but it just isn't happening. So we need to think about how we as a church intentionally forge connections with our community, and as well as encourage everyday conversation. We need to think and we need to pray. I've already had an email from someone that might lead to a really good opportunity for this. So God is already at work. But let's be praying for boldness and for connection. Finally, what I call full-time finance. We hope and aim to be in a situation for Emmanuel to retain a full-time minister, to lead this church into her next chapter. We're all in this together. It's not that clergy come in and fix things, but we do believe that a full-time minister based here at Emmanuel will help us galvanize and grow. We need to be resting in the goodness of God and galvanize for service to his kingdom. That all feels like a lot, doesn't it? So you might be thinking, what part do I play? Well, I've said this in church a few times. Church is a team sport. It is a family sport. It is not like solo synchronized swimming. Did you know that was a thing? One of the strangest things you'll ever see. Check it out if you're really bored. We're in this together, which I think means there are two parts we play. Two parts in this vision going forward. The first one is to pray. Please pray for this vision and outreach development. We can't do any of this without resting in the sovereignty and goodness of God, who delights to hear our prayers and has committed to building his church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it, the Bible says. Some of us may feel like, well, all I can do is pray. Well, if that's you, then thank you. Thank you for praying, and let's get rid of the negative vibes of saying all I can do is pray. We need to pray. All we need to do is pray. It is the heartbeat of our church. 18th century Baptist minister Charles Spurgeon, who I think I might have modelled my look on if you look a picture up of him, he was once showing people around his church. And he said, let me show you the engine room. And a few people were thinking, an engine room in a church? What are you on about? But what he did is he took them to a little room. And inside that room were people praying and praying and praying and praying. That's the thing. Prayer is the heartbeat of our church. That's why we have a particular meeting twice a month that is dedicated to prayer. I'd love to encourage you to come along. It's not intimidating. It's not strange. You don't have to say anything or pray out loud or anything like that. But it is a good thing to do if you can. But obviously, if things are the case where praying from home is what you can manage, then please do that. Please do that. And thank you for doing it. Firstly, then pray. Secondly, pledge. Now, this isn't about money, even though the connotations of that word are thusly implied. Money is important, and we've already said we'd love you to prayerfully consider giving to the work of this church. But the pledge is more about joining in. We can't do any of this without you. I can't do this vision on my own. My call as your pastor, your minister, is to encourage you to be living this out, as well as taking a lead in going forward. I would be very sad if you came away from this talk and thought, here's a list of things to do, and I can't do them, and I feel terrible. Because that is not the business of church. We believe in the grace of God, the forgiveness of sins that comes through the blood of Christ. We're carrying on as normal. We're being an ordinary church doing ordinary things, which in themselves are extraordinary avenues of hope into a world that is lost. A world that is lost without Jesus Christ. So I would ask you to prayerfully consider how God may be calling you to play your part in this vision. We're about people, not programs. What are your strengths? What are the ways God has gifted you? If you don't feel like he's gifted you, then read 1 Corinthians, because God does gift us, and pray. Ask God to tell you, show you what your giftings are. Play to your strengths. Is there a way in which you feel like you can serve this church? Come and talk to us. We would love to hear from you. And let us bear in mind the refrain we see in the book of 2 Corinthians, where the Lord says to Paul, "My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness." We go in faith, our own great weakness feeling, as the old hymn goes. This isn't about dynamic, flashy programs, the 10 ways to grow your church kind of mentality. What we're doing is we're naming our priorities and our desires for our church and our wider community. We're holding them before the Lord, and we're asking him to work in us, through us, to make the reality of Emmanuel among our church family and beyond. That is what we're called to do. Please pray for this vision. And can you pledge to be part of it?